Episode 3 of The 100 basically set the stage for how the rest of the season is going to play out. Turns out that Sanctum is actually a pretty bustling little place, with plenty of people with questionable customs and motives. There's a lot to take in during this episode, and our regular cast is getting bigger and bigger as time goes on. First off, we have to be getting serious cult vibes from the residents of the compound by now. Let's run down the list. They call their leaders primes, they have a weird obsession with lineage and bloodlines, they have call and response type phrases, and they do Tai Chi. We've gotten to see a fair amount of how their system works in practice, but we know very little of the theory behind why they act this way and how things developed from the original team that landed on Sanctum. I'm guessing the comment made by Josephine's father about his belief in God is foreshadowing this development.
What would you say if I told you that being here, in this miraculous place, makes me question that?
But we'll just have to wait and see. Another thing worth mentioning is that this setup bears striking resemblance to how we gradually learned about the cannibalism in the bunker. There was a phrase they all kept uttering that, while slightly unsettling, was wholly innocuous at first, but once we learned the context behind it, it took on another meaning. Could that be true for some of the customs practiced by the inhabitants of Sanctum? Surely there must be something unsavory if there is a group out there that is working to eliminate the primes, but what exactly could it be?
Death to primes! Death to primes!
Also, while we're on the topic of cannibalism and living in the woods, let's talk about Octavia's character arc for this season. In episode 3, we saw Bellamy make the difficult decision to leave his sister behind on Sanctum, where she would have to fend for herself.
My sister died a long time ago.
It's a very powerful scene, but was his decision the right one? Think about who we're talking about here. Octavia, card-carrying badass, the Red Queen, ruthless warrior and dogged survivalist. I get that Bellamy is justifiably worried that Octavia will doom the rest of the people on the mothership, or everyone else on the planet for that matter, but is it really a good decision to leave her where he did? I mean, her whole shtick is that she knows how to use the wilderness to her advantage, and there's a dissident faction out there that is opposed to the very group everyone else is trying to schmooze into staying. This is literally her comfort zone. You think a few toxic plants are going to keep her down for long? Hell no. She's seen and done worse than anything she could reasonably get up to on Sanctum. It's only a matter of time before she's a big-time player again. Also, for a little extra kicker, the one member of the Children of Gabriel named Xavier is almost certainly supposed to be somewhat of an analog for Lincoln. Not saying there's anything between them yet, or that there ever will be, but it's definitely a factor going forward. Finally, let's just take a moment to acknowledge what this season has been doing thematically so far. I'm getting the feeling that this is basically somewhat of a retread of the very first season, but with a unique spin on things. First of all, there's the fact that there's a bunch of people who have spent a long time in space and are landing on another planet that they know nothing about. Once they get there, they discover many things that they didn't expect to find, some good and some bad. But the big surprise is that there are people down there, and that there is a whole social dynamic around that group of people that they will have to learn and adapt to. In Season 1, there were the Grounders, and all attempts at communication didn't exactly go so well. However, Octavia eventually formed a relationship with Lincoln, who taught her how to be like his people. In this season, there is a little bit of that going on, but at least there is a little diplomacy happening between the original cast and Russell's group. Octavia also has to learn how to live on this new planet, and she's been removed from society just as she had in Season 1. The major difference between this season and earlier events is that the group on the ground is the one that's more advanced or adapted than the group that landed. Russell and his group have a safe compound and large farmlands that help to keep them alive and healthy. There was nothing like that on Earth when the original 100 landed. Another inverse is that the group landing was not at all prepared for war, whereas the Grounders were. This season, the group that's landing is battle-hardened and desperate, whereas the inhabitants of Sanctum have had peace for what we can assume to be a few generations now. Point is, this season seems to be harkening back to the themes of the first season, most likely in an attempt to get our original cast to reflect on their actions, where they came from, and atone for their sins.
Or should we call you One-Hitter?
Of course, with all the answers we got, there are still plenty of questions. Who are the Children of Gabriel, and what exactly is their relationship to Russell's group? Are they exiles? Did they choose to leave, or were they forced out? How are they surviving on this supposedly inhospitable planet? Did Murphy actually see hell? What will happen to him going forward now that he's potentially encountered his greatest fear and lived to tell the tale?
I'm pretty sure I'm going to hell.
And finally, what exactly did Dioza do that made her so infamous among the inhabitants of Sanctum? Has she been hiding some parts of her past? Have the members of Allegius 3 been fed government propaganda all their lives?
Your face is in our history books next to Hitler and Bin Laden.
Is this maybe just a bad game of telephone? Whatever it is, it's bad enough that Russell is totally fine with basically condemning a woman and her unborn child to death without any kind of trial. But now both Octavia and Dioza are outside the dome, and they have a mutual enemy. That's all for this episode. Tune in next time for more analysis of the latest episodes of The 100.
We like our simple pleasures here.
Kinky.